Yeah.
This looks very nice. Although you should know she has her jammies on.
My jammy bottoms.
Yeah.
Heck
yeah.
yeah.
That's kind of become the COVID outfit, huh?
It has.
Mm-hmm.
It has. It's a hard habit to break.
Things keep trending in the direction of informality. So I think eventually it may just be jammies all the
Jammies
time.
at work.
Yeah. Oh, and if you're tuning in earlier on, here's a little bonus feature. This is a book that I had been using, and we were just saying the piece of art on the front of it is just lovely, but I don't know anything about it. I can't see anything in the book. So if anybody's watching and you know where that picture comes from or who painted it or anything, you can let us know. Malia Bergstrom.
Malia.
It was good to see you at the airport yesterday, and so glad that you guys had the trip that you did.
Mm-hmm.
And Deb's just so moving to read what you have written.
Oh
really,
my gosh.
really honored to be able to do that. So thank you. And say hi to Judson. Tell him we're waiting for another really funny drama script to come by. Way back in the day, before we ever started working at Willow, we would get dramas at the church that we were at. And anytime there was a really funny one, a really, really well-written one, I would look at it. It was always written by Judson Poling. Yeah.
We did not know at the time.
No, gosh, I had no idea who he was. I had a picture in my mind of this very sophisticated writer type guy. And then he was very sophisticated writer type guy.
There you go.
Greg and Corinne. Man,
Aww.
we should have you sing some thankful thing this morning.
We should do a little Zoom call with some of these folks we know.
We should. Hi, Sherry. Or we could have Nancy sing a Thanksgiving song.
As long as I don't have to read notes, I'm good.
Okay, we are live. This is John and Nancy. Hello, Rick Blackman.
Oh.
And we're here for a really, really wonderful day that I have been looking forward to a ton. This is the 1-year anniversary of BecomeNew.me, of doing these devotional times. And I wanted to start by saying thank you to everybody that's been a part of it. Pat, Ron, and Bill, folks that are on the board, those of you that have supported it. It's just been hugely meaningful to me and to Nance, to our family. 1 year ago right now, I did a little Thanksgiving devotional, and then we went into an Advent season and did not know how core this would become to life or the rhythms of my life or meaningful. And so everybody who has ever watched one, ever responded back, I'm just incredibly grateful for you. I want to let you know, starting next Monday, a week from today, we're going to be doing an Advent series. It will be called Radical Acceptance. And the idea is one of the core dynamics in Scripture. God accepts me and you just the way that we are and loves us dearly. And so we get to receive that we get to accept that acceptance, and then we're to accept each other. And the idea of surrendering our lives. I can't, he can, I think I'll let him. The surrender of the will and the acceptance of life and one another, living not in a spirit of condemnation, is incredibly powerful. And so that's what we're going to be walking through together for the Advent season. I would love for you all to be a part of that. We're actually creating a Facebook account. And so you'll find out more about that. But if you want to access us through Facebook, you will be able to do that. Now, today, we're going to talk about Thanksgiving, and I'm just looking at all of these names: Becky, Kara, Kevin, Charlotte, Rosales, wow, Corky, everybody. I think this might be Scott Bolander. Man, it's just wonderful to see all those names. We're preparing this week for Thanksgiving, so I'll say a little bit, then Nance, then back to me. Thanksgiving does tend to be a distinctively Christian virtue. In the ancient classical world, it was actually kind of frowned on. Aristotle said that the great-souled person, the magnanimous man, never wanted to be in anybody's debt. And if you're thankful to somebody, you have to be kind of indebted. They have to have done a favor for you, something that you did not merit or deserve. So Thanksgiving was not really a virtue that they looked up to. And there is a kind of resistance in our spirit where we don't want to be indebted. Some of you will know an old movie, My Cousin Vinny, where at the end of it, Joe Pesci has barely won his first case, and he's with Marissa Tomei, who my friend Chuck Bergstrom admires immensely. Good morning, Chuck. And he is kind of disappointed. Marissa Tomei asks him, "Why are you disappointed?" And he says, "Well, I wanted to win the case all by myself. I didn't want any help. And then she says in that wonderful Jersey accent, oh, I just had this terrible thought. Maybe through your whole career, you'll win every case as a lawyer and somebody will help you every time. And you'll always have to say thank you afterwards. What a nightmare.
Nice Jersey accent.
Thank you. I actually practiced that just for you people. But there is something inside of us that notion of saying thank you is recognizing we're indebted. We have received something that we did not merit and do not deserve. And we can push back against that a little bit. So gratitude, giving thanks is a skill that we have to learn.
Yeah. No, and John alluded to this earlier, but so many of you this last 2 years now have prayed for us when we couldn't pray and have supported us in ways that we will be eternally grateful to you for. And it's motivated us to want to do that even more for other people. So thank you for being our community.
Yeah.
I just want to look a little bit at, sometimes I have a better chance at doing something when I understand the why behind it. And I think for gratitude, two of the things that come to mind is not only do I get to know God better, but it keeps me from complaining and it keeps me from comparing. I remember when I was 7 or 8 years old, I grew up at this tiny little church in Norwalk, California, Pioneer Baptist Church. And our pastor was bivocational before I even knew what that meant. He ran a tool and die shop during the week. And on the weekends, we had a Sunday school teacher named Charlene Avance, and she reminded me of Harper Valley PTA because she was really pretty and she wore these mini skirts. But we had access to a school bus, a bright blue school bus that was on the church property. And so she let us put shag carpet in it and we made curtains for it.
And if you're too young to understand the Harper Valley PTA reference, Google it.
She would do the flannel graph stories. And I remember at 7 or 8 years old, I love the Exodus story so much. And learning about how the children of Israel would see something that God did and be so grateful. And then literally 2 days later be complaining. And I remember at 7 years old thinking, I think I do that. Me too. And so I think one of the powers of gratitude is it allows me to see the goodness of God, even when I'm not getting what I might want. You think about the children of Israel, they got freedom after 400 years. They were on their way to the promised land that they had only dreamt of. They had manna and quail and water, but they got so caught in their ungratitude. All they wanted was what comfort they knew from the past. And I think gratitude keeps me in the present moment with God, connected to reality. And a lot of times I resist gratitude because I want to be grateful for something else. I want a circumstance to change instead of just to be grateful for what I have. And Dallas used to say, God has yet to bless anybody except in reality. So gratitude keeps me in reality and helps me let go of complaining, but then also comparing, which I think is so detrimental to our souls. John 21 has been a passage these last couple of years that has been a true north for me, where Jesus says to Peter, somebody's going to lead you to where you do not want to go. Follow me. And that part of the passage has been so helpful in ways that I don't want it to be helpful, but in these last 2 years. But then beyond that, where Jesus has that interaction with Peter, Peter doesn't immediately surrender to that. And he looks at the Apostle John following them and he says, what about him? And in that passage, Jesus gets more angry at Peter for the sin of comparison than he does the woman caught in adultery. And I think that's fascinating. And I think gratitude keeps me from comparing and says, here are the gifts God has given me. And I want to open my eyes to see them. And I want to reflect back to God my thanks for them.
I love that. I love those
And
thoughts.
I did all that without a New Jersey accent. I feel kind of less than, but.
And you're cuter than Marissa Tomei.
Let's not go there.
So there's a form of prayer that they would actually use in Israel that I thought would be cool to talk about today. So I'm going to do that. While I'm doing that, Nancy, feel real free. There's people that are putting stuff in the chat, and I'm so glad that you're doing that. And by the way, if you want to, you can write down, what are you grateful for? And
put that in the
to
chat.
see that. Numbers of you are writing about gratitude for us. And I'm so glad, John Woodall, it's been such a gift to go on the journey a bit with you. And we are the Fellowship of the Withered Hand, where we have part of where we meet is
well-earned wisdom. Sorry,
in
I'm
the
going to
place
just
of
interrupt you.
pain and suffering. But yeah, please feel free to
Be used to
keep
that.
reading through those. And interruption is Nancy's love language.
Man, and a point of contention in our marriage. But hey, that's for another video.
That's for another episode.
Right.
That's a different series. Point of contention. Yeah, go ahead and put in the chat what are you grateful for. We'll just have a celebration around that. Here's the prayer I'd not heard of, but it's associated with the celebration of Passover in the Jewish tradition, and it's called Dayenu, and that's from a single word that is apparently translated, "It would have been enough," or "It would have been sufficient." And so there's a prayer that's very, very ancient, goes back many, many, many centuries in the celebration of Passover, where the people will pray a prayer and they will say, God, if you had only done this much and not this much more that you did, it would have been sufficient. Dayenu, it would have been enough. So I'll read a few lines from this. If he had led us through the desert for 40 years, but not given us manna, Dayenu, would have been enough, would have been sufficient. If he'd fed us manna, but had not given us Sabbath, Dayenu, would have been enough. If he'd given us Sabbath, but not brought us to Mount Sinai, would have been enough. If he'd brought us to Sinai, but hadn't given us Torah, the law, wisdom about how to live, Dayenu, would have been enough. If he'd given us Torah, but not brought us to the land of Israel, to a place that we could have for our own, Dayenu, it would have been enough. Persian and Afghani Jews, apparently, when they recite this prayer and they get to the 9th phrase, they will hit each other over the head with green onions when it gets to the manna part, as a way of remembering in the Old Testament passage when it talks about people, as Nancy was saying, complaining rather than giving thanks. Back in Egypt, we had onions and garlics and leek, and so they remember our tendency to complain. And when you wonder, then why do they put the prayer in this form? If you would have done this but not that, it would have been enough. It may be that it reflects how if we stop and think and notice the details of our lives, we become much more thankful than if we just give one big global hurried thanks. And I was thinking with Thanksgiving, some of you will remember John Madden, who was a sportscaster, and he would get the telestrator. He was the first guy to do that, and just take a moment to, now we'll talk about breaking down a play, analyze it, and draw out if there was big gain. The center blocked this guy, the guard pulled and crossover, the wide receiver sold his route, the tight end cleared out, the quarterback faked the pass, the running back cut back. And when you look at all of those details spelled out, you can appreciate the play much more. The appreciation grows much deeper. And that's true not just in athletics, but in cooking or gardening or whatever activity that we're doing. When we take the time to notice each detail and the qualities and the excellencies in it, we appreciate it. And I think that's the idea in this kind of Dayenu prayer, is it's pausing to reflect on the extent of the remarkable depth of the number of God's gifts to us. So I wrote a little Dayenu prayer, and I'll share it with you, and then you can think about what that might look like for you as you get ready for Thanksgiving this week, about all of the ways in which God is more than enough, is more than sufficient. I was thinking about growing up in Rockford, Illinois. Some of you are watching this from Rockford, Illinois. If he had given me a home without Graham being with us in all those years, and banana bread and red velvet cake and popcorn that was fried in bacon grease with the bacon cut up and put in, without Stockholm Inn or tennis courts at Southeast End Park or Temple Baptist Church or East High School or long meals around the dinner table or washing the dishes and singing with my sister Barbie or pretending to be a zombie for Halloween, my brother Bart's haunted house, or Penny or Albin or Danny or Chuck, Dayenu, would have been enough. If he had let me learn without Dallas Willard or David Hubbard or Jerry Hawthorne, Ian Pitt Watson, Neil Warren, Lou Smedes, Max Dupree, Sam Reeves, John F. Anderson, F as in Frederick the Great, would have been enough. If he had provided me with Nancy as a wife without my having lots and lots of other girlfriends first. Actually, he did provide me Nancy with a wife without having any other girlfriends first, and it was Dayenu. It was sufficient. And then I think about this last year. If he had sustained us in this year without having a little grandchild to love, Dayenu, would have been enough. If he had provided financially without my getting to do the ministry that I love, this kind of thing, would have been enough. If he would have given us comfort without our getting to meet so many other people together in the fellowship of hurt and suffering, so many of you, where we got to have conversations and feel like together our pain was something where we received comfort from God, and we were able to help one another and learn together. And so there was meaning to it. Would have been enough. If you would have given Nancy good work to do without the joy of transforming the Bay with Christ, and her team was just up here this last week, and their energy and enthusiasm and love for one another, it would have been enough. If he would have given us a place to live without the joy of the cabana and chaos in the cabana and Mark and Heather, it would have been enough. If he would have walked with my family through my dad's death without the joy of that trip to the Galapagos, Dayenu, that would have been enough. If he had allowed us to keep making a living without this, without the community of the withered hand and the celebration of personal inadequacy, without so many of you bravely telling your own stories of loss and pain, addiction, family heartbreak, parenting struggle, financial challenge, cancer, loss of career or relationship or reputation, without so many people saying, keep going, don't give up, we can walk through this together, Dayenu, it would have been enough. But God has not just done enough. God never just does enough. He gives far beyond that. And so there's one other ancient prayer that I thought I would express today to give thanks. And this is recited in Israel in the Sabbath morning service. And the idea is that we reflect here on the abundance of God's gifts for us, on just how many they are, how profuse they are. Were our mouth filled with the song as the sea is with water, and our tongue ringing praise as the roaring waves? Were our lips full of adoration as the wide expanse of heaven, and our eyes sparkling like the sun or the moon? Were our hands spread out in prayer as the eagles of the sky, and our feet as swift as deer? We should still be unable to thank thee and bless thy name, Lord our God and God of our fathers, for 1,000th of the countless millions of favors which thou hast conferred on our fathers and on us. And if you think, like Nancy was saying, how we are so apt to take things for granted and complain and compare, that in the average human life, we get about 670 million breaths. And our friend Jack Levison talks about how breath and spirit's the same word. So we take in spirit breath. Every time we take in a breath, it's not just oxygen, it's not just air, it's the Spirit of God that is sustaining us. Every one of those 670 million lungfuls of air is a gift. And we get about 2 billion heartbeats in life. Every time my heart beats, I didn't make that happen. That's a gift. For the countless millions of favors which thou hast conferred on our fathers and on us. So thank you, God. Thank you for the millions of favors. Thank you for 1 second that follows another. Thank you for dawn and dusk. Thank you for tiny little lives and little hands and little feet and aging lives and every life in between. Thank you that we get to be a part of this community. Hope you have a wonderful Thanksgiving. Anything else you want to say? Anything anybody's been saying?
I mean, I just could sit here and read these all day long. Ken Christensen said it. Today's the first time he's joined us. It's so good to see you.
Oh, wow.
Rhea, I just made your brie recipe last night. Rick, Sherry left her coat here when you guys were here. So next time you come, you can pick it up. But not only knowing so many of you, but then watching what you're grateful for is very, very deeply moving. And we are so grateful for you.
Yep. So thank you for joining. Thank you for this last year. I will look forward to Advent and learning about the power of surrender and acceptance
Mm.
in our lives as we receive it from God and then extend it to our lives and our world, our emotions, and one another. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Love you guys.
Can we keep reading these?
We can. I think Tim will probably edit this out, but we're just reading now, and holy
Bonnie.
smokes. Yeah. Eddie Mayato, I saw yours, man. Thank God for you
Lindsay,
and your
Lynn, you
life.
were the first person to bring us food to our house when we started at Willow.
Doug Veenstra, we
What?
got a situation here.
Oh, Pam. Steve Clifford, you have no idea how cool that bus was. Sometime I'll tell you all about it. You would appreciate shag carpet. I know that.
Yep. Yep.
Mm.
Man.
That's the Fellowship of the Withered Hand.
Yep. Thank you, Becky and Rico and Ann. Couldn't have done this last year without you guys.
Nancy
Man.
Beach.
Yep. Thank you, Nancy.
Mm.
Mike signed rapid packaging is Mike.
Oh, that's great. I wondered
So,
who that was.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, he goes by rapid packaging. I don't know why.
Dwayne Allman.
Yeah. Thanks, you guys.
Yeah. Bye. It was beautifully done.
Oh, honey,
It
that
would
was